1952, the set of The Quiet Man in Ireland. Producer Herbert J. Yates was having a meltdown. The film was over budget, behind schedule, and the weather was refusing to cooperate. He needed someone to blame, and he chose the easiest target, Maureen O'Hara. "You're wasting everyone's time with your demands." Yates screamed at Maureen in front of the entire cast and crew. "This isn't your production to control. You're just an actress. Do what you're told and stop causing problems." Maureen stood there, humiliated and angry, but holding her tongue because producers had the power to end careers. The crew looked away uncomfortably. Director John Ford seemed about to intervene, but someone else moved faster. John Wayne stepped between Yates and Maureen. At 6 feet 4 inches and 225 pounds, Duke was an imposing figure, but what he said next wasn't a threat. It was something that shocked everyone even more. "If you ever speak to Maureen like that again, you'll finish this picture without me. And every other picture after this too." What happened in the next 5 minutes would challenge Hollywood's power structure. Prove that sometimes the biggest person in the room doesn't need to be the loudest, and cement one of the most legendary friendships in film history. Before we explore this incredible moment of respect and loyalty on a Hollywood set, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This isn't just about two movie stars. It's about standing up to bullies who abuse power and treating colleagues with dignity, even when it costs you. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and let's begin. The making of The Quiet Man. The Quiet Man was John Ford's passion project, a romantic drama set in Ireland that was far different from the westerns he was famous for directing. Ford had been trying to get the film made for over a decade, but studios kept rejecting it as too risky, too artistic, not commercial enough. Finally, Republic Pictures agreed to produce it, but with conditions. They'd only greenlight the film if John Wayne starred in it. Duke was Republic's biggest star, and his name could sell tickets even to a romantic drama that had no cowboys or gunfights. Wayne, despite being synonymous with westerns, agreed immediately. He trusted John Ford completely. Ford had directed many of Wayne's best films. And Wayne was excited about the challenge of playing a romantic lead in a different kind of story. For the female lead, Ford wanted Maureen O'Hara. She was a major star who'd already worked with both Ford and Wayne on several films. She was Irish herself, which brought authenticity to the role. And she had the combination of strength and vulnerability the character required. But there was tension from the start. Republic Pictures head, Herbert J. Yates, didn't want to make this film. He wanted Wayne in another western that would guarantee box office success. He only greenlit The Quiet Man, because Wayne had threatened to leave the studio if they didn't. Yates made his displeasure clear throughout production. Every budget overrun, every scheduled delay, every problem became ammunition for Yates to complain about the project and the people making it. Maureen O'Hara, more than just a leading lady. Maureen O'Hara was not a typical 1950s Hollywood actress who quietly took orders and stayed in her lane. She was intelligent, opinionated, and deeply involved in every aspect of her performances. She'd studied acting seriously, understood film technique, and wasn't afraid to question choices that didn't make sense. This made her an exceptional actress, but also, in the eyes of some producers and studio executives, difficult. In 1950s Hollywood, women who spoke up, who had opinions, who challenged authority were labeled problems regardless of whether their suggestions were actually good. Maureen had dealt with this her entire career. She'd fought against being typecast. She'd pushed back against costumes that were inappropriate for characters. She'd questioned dialogue that didn't ring true. And she'd earned a reputation among certain Hollywood executives as someone who caused trouble. Herbert Yates was one of those executives who saw Maureen's intelligence and involvement as problems rather than assets. To him, actors should show up, say their lines, and follow orders without question. Maureen's tendency to engage with the creative process frustrated him. John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara's friendship. What made this situation particularly important was the friendship between Wayne and O'Hara. They'd first worked together in 1950 on Rio Grande and discovered an instant chemistry. Not romantic chemistry. Both were married to other people, but a deep mutual respect and genuine friendship. Wayne admired Maureen's talent, her work ethic, and her refusal to be intimidated by Hollywood's male-dominated power structure. "She's tougher than most of the men I know," Wayne once said. "She doesn't back down, doesn't take crap from anyone, and still manages to be a hell of an actress." Maureen, in turn, respected Wayne's professionalism and discovered a depth to him that didn't always come through in his tough guy film persona. "Duke is far more intelligent and sensitive than people give him credit for," she said in interviews. "He plays these tough cowboys and soldiers, but he's actually quite thoughtful and kind." Their friendship was built on mutual respect, something that was relatively rare between male and female stars in that era. Wayne never condescended to Maureen or treated her as less capable because she was a woman. Maureen never used their friendship to ask for special treatment or favors. They were simply friends who respected each other's craft and stood up for each other when it mattered. The pressure cooker of production by the time the incident occurred. The Quiet Man production had been dealing with numerous challenges. The Irish weather was unpredictable, forcing schedule changes. Some of the locations were difficult to access. The film was going over budget. Herbert Yates was making daily phone calls to the production, demanding that Ford speed up filming and cut costs. Ford, a notoriously stubborn director who refused to be pushed around by studio executives, largely ignored these demands, which only made Yates angrier. Yates decided to fly to Ireland personally to straighten out the production. This made everyone nervous. Yates on set meant interference, pressure, and likely confrontations. The day Yates arrived, tensions were already high. They were filming a crucial scene that required specific lighting, and clouds kept rolling in and ruining the shots. Each delay cost money and put them further behind schedule. Maureen had made a suggestion about her character's motivation in the scene that Ford was considering. It wasn't a demand or a complaint, just a thoughtful observation about what might make the scene stronger. Ford was listening, discussing it with her, figuring out if they should adjust the approach. That's when Yates exploded. The public humiliation. What the hell is going on here? Yates stormed onto the set, his face red with anger. Why aren't we filming? Why is everyone standing around? John Ford, who didn't like being questioned on his own set, replied calmly. We're waiting for the light. Weather's not cooperating. So while we wait, we're holding production meetings? Yates gestured at Ford and Maureen, who'd been discussing the scene. This is costing us money. Every minute we're not filming is money down the drain. We'll film when the light's right, Ford said firmly. I'm not shooting a scene that'll look terrible just to save a few dollars. Yates's attention turned to Maureen. And you're wasting everyone's time with your demands. This isn't your production to control. You're just an actress. Do what you're told and stop causing problems. The set went silent. Crew members froze. Other actors looked away, embarrassed to witness this. Being screamed at in front of the entire production was humiliating for any actor, but especially for Maureen, who'd done nothing wrong except engage thoughtfully with the director about her character. Maureen's face flushed, but she kept her composure. She knew that fighting back would just give Yates more ammunition to call her difficult. She knew that producers had enormous power. They could end careers, get actors blacklisted, make it impossible to work. So she said nothing, just stood there taking the verbal abuse while seething inside. Ford's measured response. John Ford stepped forward. Herb, Maureen was just. I don't want to hear it, John. This production is out of control. You're over budget, behind schedule, and apparently letting your actors run the show instead of directing them. Ford's jaw tightened. He was used to studio interference, but this was crossing a line. Still, Ford knew he had to maintain some relationship with Yates if he wanted to keep making films. Let's discuss this privately. No, everyone here needs to understand that this is MY production, my money, and MY decisions that matter. Not some actress who thinks she knows better than the people actually running things. Yates turned back to Maureen. You're here to look pretty and say your lines. That's it. I don't want to hear another suggestion, another comment, another thought from you. Clear. It was one of the most demeaning things you could say to an actress, reducing her entire contribution to appearance and line reading, dismissing her intelligence and craft as worthless. Maureen's eyes glistened with tears, not from sadness but from rage and humiliation. She still said nothing. Wayne's intervention. John Wayne had been standing about 20 feet away, in costume for the next scene, watching this unfold. Those who knew Duke well later said they saw him make a decision in that moment. His jaw set. His eyes hardened. He took a step forward. Duke walked across the set until he was standing between Yates and Maureen. He didn't touch Yates or threaten him physically. He just stood there, all 6 feet 4 inches of him, making Yates step back simply through presence. That's enough, Duke said quietly. Yates looked up at Wayne, surprised. Excuse me? I said that's enough. You don't talk to Maureen like that. You don't talk to anyone on this set like that. Wayne, this doesn't concern you. It absolutely concerns me. Maureen is my friend and my colleague. She's one of the finest actresses I've ever worked with. And she wasn't demanding anything or causing problems. She was doing her job, which is to think about her character and make this film better. Yates tried to reassert his authority. I'm the producer. I know who you are, Duke interrupted, his voice still calm but carrying absolute certainty. You're the guy who didn't want to make this film. Who only agreed because I threatened to leave if you didn't. Who's been looking for an excuse to complain about it since day one. The crew was watching in stunned silence. John Wayne was the studio's biggest star, but he was also generally easygoing and non-confrontational. This was a side of Duke most of them had never seen, protective, firm, and unwilling to back down. The line in the sand. Yates sputtered. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining something to you, Duke said, still in that quiet, controlled tone that was somehow more intimidating than shouting would have been. If you ever speak to Maureen like that again, if you ever disrespect her or dismiss her contributions like she doesn't matter, you'll finish this picture without me. You're under contract. Contract doesn't mean I have to tolerate you abusing people I care about. I'll walk off this production right now if you say one more word to Maureen in that tone. Try me. The threat was clear and credible. Wayne was the only reason Republic Pictures had agreed to make this film. Without him, the production would collapse. Yates would lose all the money already invested. And Wayne's reputation was solid enough that the industry would understand why he walked. No one would blame him for refusing to work with a producer who publicly humiliated cast members. And it's not just this picture, Duke continued. If you think I'm going to keep making films for a studio that treats people like this, you're mistaken. Every other picture you've got me scheduled for? Find someone else. I'm done. The producer's calculation. Yates's face went through several shades of red. He was furious at being challenged, especially in front of the entire crew. His authority had been publicly undermined by his own biggest star. But Yates was also a businessman. He quickly calculated the cost of Duke walking away. Wayne was Republic Pictures' most valuable asset. His westerns made millions. His name on a marquee guaranteed box office success. Losing him would potentially bankrupt the studio. On the other side of the equation was his pride and his need to control his production. But pride doesn't pay bills. Control doesn't mean anything if you're controlling an empty studio. Yates looked at Duke, then at Maureen, then at Ford, who was watching with barely concealed satisfaction. The entire crew was frozen, waiting to see what would happen. Fine, Yates finally said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Point taken. Now can we get back to work? He turned and walked away from the set, heading back toward the production office. But everyone there understood what had just happened. John Wayne had just put his entire career on the line to defend Maureen O'Hara, and he'd won. The immediate aftermath. Once Yates was gone, the tension on set slowly dissipated. Duke turned to Maureen. You okay? Maureen nodded, not trusting herself to speak without crying. Duke gently squeezed her shoulder. Nobody talks to you like that while I'm around. Nobody. Ford walked over, a slight smile on his weathered face. Duke, that was the most interesting scene you've played all week. Maybe we should film it. The joke broke the tension and people laughed. But everyone on that set knew they'd witnessed something significant. John Wayne standing up to a powerful producer to defend a colleague's dignity. The change dynamic. Herbert Yates stayed in Ireland for another week, but he never confronted Maureen again. He barely spoke to her at all, in fact. When he had notes or complaints about the production, he directed them to John Ford, not to the actors. The crew noticed the change and understood why. Duke had drawn a line, and Yates wasn't willing to cross it again. Whatever power Yates had as a producer, Duke had more power as the star who could walk away and take the studio's future with him. Maureen later wrote in her autobiography about that day. Duke didn't just defend me. He defended the principle that people deserve to be treated with respect regardless of their position. He used his power to protect someone with less power. That's not just friendship, that's character. The production continued, and despite Yates's early predictions of disaster, The Quiet Man became a critical and commercial success. It won 2 Academy Awards and is now considered one of the greatest films John Ford ever directed. The friendship that deepened. Wayne and O'Hara's friendship, already strong, became unbreakable after that incident. They went on to make 5 films together, and their on-screen chemistry was legendary. But people who knew them said their off-screen friendship was even more remarkable. They trusted each other completely, director Andrew V. McLaglen said. When you have that kind of trust, when you know someone will go to the mat for you, it shows up in your work together. That's why their films together are so special. Maureen often said that Wayne was one of the few men in Hollywood who treated her as an equal. Duke never made me feel like I was less important because I was a woman. He valued my opinion. He respected my craft. And when someone tried to diminish me, he stood up for me without being asked. That's rare. That's precious. Wayne, characteristically, downplayed what he'd done. When asked about it years later, he said simply, "Maureen's my friend." You stand up for your friends. What else would I do? The industry impact. Word of Wayne's stand spread through Hollywood quickly. The story got embellished in the retelling. Some versions had Wayne physically threatening Yates. Others claimed he actually walked off set, but the core truth remained. John Wayne had risked his career to defend Maureen O'Hara from a bullying producer. The story had an impact on how other producers and executives treated actors, at least when John Wayne was involved. They knew he wasn't just the tough guy he played on screen. He was someone who would actually follow through on protecting people he cared about. More importantly, it gave other actors, especially women, courage to stand up for themselves. If John Wayne, the ultimate masculine Hollywood icon, thought women deserved respect and dignity on set, then maybe the industry's casual misogyny could be challenged. Yates's lasting resentment. Herbert Yates never forgot being publicly challenged by Wayne. Though he continued working with Duke because Republic Pictures needed him, their relationship was forever strained. Yates looked for opportunities to assert his authority, to prove he was still in control. But he was more careful about how he treated people on Wayne's films. He'd learned that Duke's easygoing nature had limits, and crossing those limits came with real consequences. Interestingly, The Quiet Man became one of Republic Pictures' most profitable films, vindicating Ford's vision and Wayne's support of the project. Yates never publicly admitted he'd been wrong about the film, but the box office numbers spoke for themselves. The power of using privilege for others. John Wayne's response to Yates teaches us profound lessons about power, privilege, and standing up for others. 1. Use your power to protect people with less power. Wayne had enormous leverage as Republic Pictures' biggest star. He could have stayed out of it, let Maureen handle her own battles. Instead, he used his power to protect someone who had less leverage than him. That's what allies do. They use their privilege to defend others. 2. Sometimes the biggest person doesn't need to be the loudest. Wayne didn't yell. He didn't threaten violence. He just calmly explained reality. Disrespect Maureen again and lose me. That quiet certainty was more powerful than any tantrum could have been. Real strength doesn't need volume. 3. Stand up in the moment, not afterward. Wayne didn't wait until later to have a private conversation with Yates. He intervened immediately, publicly, in the moment when it mattered. That's what makes it meaningful. Not retroactive support, but being there when someone needs you. 4. Be willing to pay the cost. Wayne's threat to walk away wasn't empty. He was genuinely willing to sacrifice his career, his income, his relationship with the studio. That willingness to pay a personal price is what made his stand credible and effective. 5. Treat colleagues as equals, not subordinates. Wayne valued Maureen's contributions because he saw her as an equal partner in making the film, not as a subordinate who should just follow orders. That respect was the foundation of their friendship and why he was willing to fight for her dignity. The broader truth. Hollywood in the 1950s was brutally hierarchical. Producers had enormous power. Male stars had more power than female stars. And women who spoke up or had opinions were routinely labeled difficult to justify mistreating them. Wayne's intervention challenged that hierarchy. He used his position at the top to defend someone lower down, making it clear that power should protect people, not abuse them. Modern relevance. We still see this dynamic in workplaces everywhere. People with power abusing those with less, and bystanders staying silent because getting involved might cost them. Wayne shows us what to do in those moments. Use whatever privilege you have to protect vulnerable people. Intervene in the moment, not just afterward. Be willing to accept real consequences for doing the right thing. Make your boundaries clear and follow through. Treat colleagues with respect regardless of hierarchy. Your turn. If this story changed how you think about using power to protect others, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Share this with someone who needs to hear that real strength means standing up for people who have less power than you. Drop a comment. Have you ever witnessed someone use their privilege or power to defend someone else? What happened? What did you learn? Remember, a producer screamed at Maureen O'Hara, reducing her to just an actress who should shut up and follow orders. John Wayne stepped between them and calmly said, "Treat her with respect or finish this film without me." He risked his career to defend his friend's dignity. That's what real strength looks like, not loudness or violence, but quiet courage backed by willingness to sacrifice for what's right. See you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring stories that remind us that real heroes use their power to protect others. Real friendship means standing up when it costs you something, and real strength is measured not by what you can take, but by what you're willing to give up for others.